When manager Brian Epstein was alive, all the Beatles had to do was pick up the phone and everything was paid for. They never gave a second thought to how much they spent or where it came from. With him gone, they were forced to confront some hard facts. They were taxed at 96%, while the music publishing company, Northern Songs, provided John and Paul with some untaxed income. George and Ringo were poor in comparison. Everyone spent well beyond their means. The tax experts' advice was simple: expand. Invest in related businesses with real estate values and go public in 4 or 5 years. For the Beatles, the message was spend. For several months, the Beatles considered starting a business, but the word business had terrible connotations. Why can't business be called something catchy like Apple? According to the Beatles, Apple would be a place where business could be fun. Apple Corps was then created. The formation of the new company included a partnership agreement, which they all signed. As it turned out, John was so high at the time that he couldn't remember signing any papers at all. The initial plan was to open a chain of record stores, not so much to sell records as to acquire valuable real estate, but that was deemed too commercial for the Beatles. Apple's design had to reflect the spirit of the times, a multifaceted source of funding for all forms of creativity: music, filmmaking, publishing, design, and electronics. Apple, like the Beatles, became larger than life. On May 12, 1968, John and Paul traveled to New York to officially announce the birth of Apple. They appeared on The Tonight Show with an estimated audience of 25 million people, revealing their plans for Apple to the world.
It's just trying to mix business with enjoyment.
Pleasure.
Because we're in business, you know, we find ourselves in business.
Are you the
We're trying to
directors?
make it-
Are you the directors
Yeah.
of this?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like all the profits won't go into our pockets. They'll go to help people, but not like a charity.
It's a business concerning records, films, and electronics. And as a sideline, whatever it's called, manufacturing or whatever. But we want to set up a system whereby people who just want to make a film about anything don't have to go on their knees in somebody's office, probably yours.
We should have had a big sign, you don't have to beg.
The word spread throughout the world. Every dreamer, crook, rip-off artist, and phony entrepreneur realized the same thing. The Beatles were so wealthy, they were giving money away. All you had to do was show an idea to them, and they would say, "Go away and do it." That night, John and Paul had no idea what they had unleashed. In addition to their announcement on The Tonight Show, Apple began a newspaper campaign asking aspiring artists to bring their ideas to them. Alistair Taylor, Brian's former assistant, appeared in their commercial as a street musician. The headline stated, "This man has talent." One day, he sang his songs to a tape recorder borrowed from the man next door and sent the tape, letter, and photograph to Apple Music on 94 Baker Street, London. If you were thinking of doing the same thing yourself, do it now. This man now owns a Bentley.
We just got inundated with tapes and poetry and scripts and phew. And in actual fact, I don't really think we got any bands or any artists by that method.
It turns out that a lot of people wanted Bentleys, and the majority of them showed up at 3 Savile Row. The list of people with schemes, plots, and plans is as long as it is astonishing. An American man wanted them to buy 6 square miles of land in Arizona to hold a 3-week rock and roll festival attended by 3 million people to climax in a live performance by the Beatles. There were several messiahs and 1 or 2 doomsday prophets. A family of Californian hippies practically moved into the Apple building, claiming to be on their way to the Fiji Islands and requiring John's help in establishing a commune. The proposals and schemes submitted to the office could fill a book, and they were stacked in the storage closet known as the Black Room. At the start of Apple's life on 3 Savile Row, Paul was very interested in the company, acting like a kid with a new set of trains. He arrived at the office every morning for the first few months and went over the details of running the company. The record division was his personal pride and joy. The other Beatles, on the other hand, were not so enthusiastic.
But people didn't do the same amount of work. You know, I think I lived in London, I was there more. So I probably did a little bit more production, for instance, than Ringo did. I'm not sure what Ringo did, actually.
I wasn't as involved as the others. As I say, you know, it was fun. We'd go in and, you know, a lot of what it did related to the four of us.
As I say, John wanted to do stuff like Zapple. He wanted a sort of funky label that he could do crazy stuff on. So that became his area.
In July 1968, Apple relocated to new headquarters, more befitting its grandiose goals. The Beatles spent £7 million, adjusted to inflation, for a 5-story Georgian townhouse at 3 Savile Row. Each executive was given his own office. Magic Alex was set to work on the ridiculous promise of a private studio complete with 78-track recording. There was also a well-equipped kitchen stacked with everything. At all hours of the day, 2 cordon bleu chefs prepared an endless array of dishes. On the front steps, at any weather or time of the day, waited multiple fangirls known as the Apple Scruffs, immortalized in a song by George. Trying to control Apple's spending was like riding on the back of a tiger. It's difficult to hold on, but if you let go, the tiger eats you. It wouldn't have been so bad if there had been a ringmaster to control the circus the Beatles let Apple become. Because there was no authority to control the cash flow, money was simply pissed away. Thus, they began to search for a new CEO. We haven't half the money people think we have. We're losing money. If it carries on like this, we'll be broke in 6 months, John declared on January 18, 1969. But John's financial SOS was not taken seriously. For years, the Beatles had been hyped as the wealthiest young man in the world. In terms of gross income, the estimate was accurate, yet John had not exaggerated. The spending was so massive and catastrophic that in early 1969, the Beatles were virtually broke. And the only man who read John's signal correctly was Alan Klein, who would eventually become their new manager in the same year.
It might have been exciting for everybody else and for people that came in from the outside. For me, it was a lot of hard work setting it up and a lot of chaos.
I was still in India when it started. I think it was basically John and Paul's madness, ego running away with themselves or with each other.
The Apple facade, you know, that whatever was going on those days, that everybody's been knocking us.
We were just guys goofing off, having a lot of fun, trying to get things under our control. That was basically what we're trying to do, which a lot of people do now. They have their own companies, they take lawyers to meetings and get good deals and things, you know. It was the start of all of that, but it was a pretty haphazard start.
But he's even going to do Apple now. He's going to do the same thing and spend. If it happens, he'll do exactly what we did and lose all his money. You know, I knew that we were in trouble then. I didn't really have any misconceptions about our ability to do anything other than play music, and I was scared. You know.
You know, I mean, I had a lot of ideas of we could do this and we could do that, but when it came down to it, really, the only thing we could do was write songs and make records and be Beatles.